All right, welcome to the Resource Rundown, everyone. Today we're going into how to properly socialize our homeschooler. Now, as every homeschooling family out there, I'm sure, is doing, we should be making sure that we're raising individuals and kids that are going to grow up to be confident, capable kids out in society. Now, before we even begin, I want to go over a common misconception that we get with homeschooling, and that's that your kids' social interactions are going to be limited. This is absolutely false, because as a homeschooling family, your social interactions are actually limitless, because you can go and move to another county. You can go take your kid to another state or another country. You're not confined to the same location with the same people every single day. So while a lot of people are going to come at you saying, hey, you're limiting your kid's social ability, you're limiting their social potential, you can confidently know in your heart that you're not. Now, if you don't utilize experience and take your kids out into the real world, well, then that's going to be on you. And that's not homeschooling's fault. That's just a parenting's issue. We want to make sure as homeschooling families that we are putting our kid in the best situation to succeed. And to do this, when it comes to socializing, there's a couple of different things we can do. Now, before we get into it, I was supposed to do an quick introduction with, common concerns about homeschooling. Will they be socially awkward? Are you afraid they're going to grow up to be weird? Are they missing out on the high school experience? All baloney. Throw them aside. Now, let's get into the meats. So point number one I bring up is communication is a skill and not a trait. And the reason I know this is true is because you're looking at someone firsthand who is true to. Now, I was never considered a shy individual by any means, but I would have social anxiety of feeling like there was always a barrier of people believing homeschoolers were weird just because they were homeschooled. So I felt like I had to bring that down in people. But then also I would have kind of an anxious feeling of, how do I continue this conversation? How do I expand on conversations? I had the introductions, and if the conversation was flowing, I was fine. But whenever there was that awkward silence or that awkward dead space, sometimes instead of just sitting in it comfortably or understanding that's actually a natural part of conversations, I would really stress that situation in general. I graduated high school. I went to baseball. I went to college to play baseball. And then my last year, I knew, okay, I'm not going to be a professional baseball player. I need to figure out how I'm going to make money. So I started a wholesaling business, wholesaling real estate. And if anyone knows anything about that business, it's actually a very sales-oriented career. So you're going into people's homes who are usually in a financial distress situation, and you're having to negotiate at a discount price on their house so that you could make money when you sell it to the investor. So the only way to be good at it is to be able to build rapport, be able to influence, and be able to communicate efficiently with the homeowners. Now, as a young, I was a 21, 22-year-old kid going into people's home, not knowing anything about real estate, just knowing this dude online said if I did this, I could make some money. I was being exposed of, hey, every time there was a flaw or a hole in my pitch, I was being exposed. So it led me to start really, 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 really diving into communication and influence. And all it took was a couple books. Within a couple books, man, I gathered everything I needed. And once I started implementing this information, I could instantly start seeing the change in my life. So, I know communication is a skill and not a trait because I've been through it myself. And also, I understand this because of the business I run today. With my detailing business, I am constantly dealing with people who are older and more successful, a lot more successful, and usually a lot older too. So you're working on $1 million boat, you're working on multiple $1 million boats. These guys don't just want you to come in and disrespect their stuff. They got to be confident with you. They got to be comfortable. They got to have trust in you that you're going to treat their property like it's yours, that you're going to treat their boat with respect, that you're not going to cut corners. So every single day, I'm seeing that my communication skill is getting better because different types of people who I used to, not book a job because I couldn't build their trust, I now can book them. Different interactions, customers blaming me for things I didn't do, having to deal with that. Customers getting mad at me for things my guys did do. I have to deal with that. But I see every single day that my communication skill is just getting better and better and better. But it's because I'm aware. I'm constantly looking to grow in this area. Now, the last thing I'll touch on is that this is going to be a skill and not a trait. So that means with the right amount of reps, your kid can become a master. And from what people say, 10,000 reps equals mastery. As a homeschooling family, you have the opportunity to blow 10,000 interactions tenfold over. At the local traditional school, their 10,000 interactions are with the same, let's just go crazy high numbers and say 10,000 people. It's not. You are setting your kid up If you work for it and if you put effort into it, you're setting your kid up for a better success by homeschooling them, because you can put them in different situations. You can put them in different kinds of situations. And we'll get into that in a little bit later, but let's just go ahead and move on into point 2, because I'm kind of moving here. So point number 2 is going to be utilizing real life everyday situations. As a homeschooling family, your success is going to be based on the amount of times you get your kids out into public and around other people, and the way you actually coach and teach and help them gain experience on every single interaction, whether it's from the deli dude at the local Publix to the gas station clerk. It doesn't matter. Every single interaction is practice. They're fine-tuning their skills. They're getting better and better and better, and you should be coaching them this whole entire time. Now, where can we find these real-life situations? That's going to be super easy, and I'm sure you guys are already thinking of them, but you got the grocery store, you have the gas station, you have calling your insurance agent about a claim, having your kid book a reservation for a hotel. All of these things here can be expanded on as well. Just take the grocery store, for example. They can do things where simply asking the clerk where something's located, to seeing an old lady, helping her, with something, pushing her cart maybe in the parking lot for her, handling the checkout, counting the money. Maybe you, in the grocery store, you play a game with your kid where you send them up to different individuals and they have to just collect a name. These little things like this, you're never going to be able to do inside of a school system. Inside the traditional school system, anytime a kid tries to go outside of the box, they're going to experience negative backlash. At the house, we can encourage kids to go outside the box. We don't want to confine our youth. We want them to be outside the box thinkers. We want them to be creative. We want them to be innovators. So to do this, we need to put them in situations that it's going to push them to freaking make them grow. And I think these real life situations are great areas that you can build the framework for your kid to become a really confident and comfortable individual in all social settings. Now, the only thing that you're going to hear with this is going to be those situations don't create real relationships. And I agree with you, they don't. They really don't. But they do, like I said, allow you to build the framework to then build off of and create real life relationships. So how do we find situations for our kids to build real life meaningful relationships? And that's going to be within extracurricular activities in your local area. No matter where you are in the country, there's a local rec league, there's a 4-H club, a chess club, a local homeschooling group. NxtEra's is obviously your best, but it doesn't matter where you are. You have access to these things. And from chess club to a travel baseball team to a competitive cheerleading squad, it doesn't matter what it is. Anytime you're putting your kids in a situation where they're around other individuals, working together for an end goal or striving towards the same goal, it's going to build camaraderie. It's going to help them build those relationships. And it's also going to give them an opportunity to have time and to have an experience to work around to create those relationships. Now, I'm not saying if you put your kid in the local rec league, he's going to be the most popular and he's going to be friends with everyone. But there is going to be a couple individuals he come across that he really does enjoy. And those people are the ones you tie into. And those are the people that you build those long-lasting relationships with. At a certain point, your kid's going to know what they like to do. So if you're putting them around other individuals that have the same likes, interests, and goals as them, naturally they're going to be able to build friendships and build relationships with these people. So I just think we should use real-life situations to build the frameworks, to get all the rejection out, to getting kind of some old lady screaming at you, get away from me, some gas station attendee being a butthole. It don't matter what it is. We use those situations for the reps, boom, 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 boom. And then we use the extracurricular activities to actually build the relationships. And then that's where we get into the nitty, the gritty. Hey, why does this kid not enjoy you anymore? Why does this kid not want to be your friend anymore? Why are you having an issue with this individual? These are things that we can actually now go into building deep communication and personal social skills with our kids compared to just the everyday interaction. So again, use the real life situations to build the framework and the extracurricular activities to build the deep relationships. Okay, so we got the real life situations and the extracurricular activity. Well, now we're saying how we're gonna build these real life meaningful relationships. That's gonna bring me to the communication tips. Now, when it comes to communication, it gets boiled down to some pretty simple things. And I went through pretty much everything I could think of and try to remember what helped me the most, and I tried to include them here. And point number 1 is gonna be own the conversation. And before I get into what does owning the conversation look like, I'm going to tell you what it doesn't mean. It doesn't mean you're being the loudest. It doesn't mean you're talking the most. It doesn't mean you're talking over individuals. Both the introverted and the extroverted individual can own the conversation the exact same. So what does it mean? It means that we're in control of the conversation by listening and asking the questions that are going to guide the conversation. So when I say own the conversation, I mean we're in control of where the conversation is going simply by listening and asking questions that can guide the conversation. So that brings me into my second tip within this. So when you're owning the conversation, and we're doing that by the questions we're asking and listening and not trying to talk the most, well, what do we talk about? Well, people like to talk about themselves the most. So anytime you're in a situation or your kid's in a situation where there's going to be some sort of conversation with maybe someone they're not super comfortable with. You know, it's very normal, for kids to feel stressed going into this situation. It's very normal for adults to feel stressed going into this situation. But what we got to do is we have to just really focus in on the individual we're talking to. We don't know their life story. This person has so many experiences. This person has so many different things that's happened to them, so many different points of views that you have. All you have to do is drop the ego and open up yourself to asking questions to them, and the conversation potential is endless. So what I rely on if I'm meeting somebody new, let me just give you guys, I guess, something to work with here. In that situation, I'm coming across someone, I'm not going to be asking them, hey, what's your favorite color? You know, but what I will do is if we're around something, so say we're at some kind of event, I'm going to base my questions around that event at first, and then I'll start pinging them off of that. If we're not at an event, we just ran into each other or just got introduced to each other as random, I'm simply going to ask them about themselves. Asking anyone about themselves, where are you from? What do you do for work? How long have you been doing that? Basic, simple questions just gets the person to open up. And then from there, if you're actively listening, you then can start getting real questions that they're talking about that's, you know, if you're interested in. And you can ask those questions, or you can start seeing where they're going. If they're from Kentucky, they just moved to Florida 2 years ago. Okay, bingo. Next question is what inspired the move to Florida? You know, it's just little things like this where if you get your kid to understand that controlling the conversation is by listening and asking questions is not hard, then they're going to be all right. A couple other things to go over with them before we move on is going to be showing real interest. So how do we show real interest with somebody? You're asking them questions, great start, but now let's show that we're actually interested in what they're saying. To do this, you want to keep your focus on them. That doesn't mean you want to be, you know, awkwardly staring at them in their eyeballs, but it means that you want to be focused on this. You do want to maintain eye contact for the most part. Kind of judge how the other person. Some individuals are really confident. They'll stare you in your eyes. Just stare right back at them. You know, some individuals like to talk looking off to the side a little bit. That's fine. Just when you start to talk, kind of look off to the side, look back at them. You can kind of gauge what the other person is comfortable with just by the way their eyes are moving and operating. So smiling is one that we're all able to do, and there's really no reason you shouldn't do it. And if you're not doing it, it's because of a choice that you're making. So a simple smile, a simple head nod is another one. These are gestures that can just reaffirm to the person that you're listening. They don't take a lot from you. You don't even have to think much about it, but a simple smile, a simple head nod just reaffirms that you're listening, you're hanging with the person, and that you are genuinely interested in what they're talking about. Remember to use their names. And the last thing I'm going to say is make them feel important. Now, this doesn't mean you have to kiss their butt, but what it does mean is if you're talking with somebody, be 100% focused on that individual. Don't be looking at people walking by. Don't be looking at your phone. Don't be thinking about things that you got going on. Be 100% committed to being with that person in that moment. And I can promise you, if you do that, the ability to communicate with them is just going to be so much easier because you're going to be in that state where things are coming easy to you. All right, and just a little quick rundown before we go any further, what we got for the communication tips. I know I kind of went on there a little bit. I'm sorry about that. But own the conversation. That means actively listen, ask questions, and build off of those questions. You have show real interest by keeping focus, maintaining eye contact, actively listening, smiling, head nodding, using their names, talking about points that they're bringing up within the conversation, and then making them feel important. The last thing we're going to touch on is going to be owning their personality. Now, For the most part, I don't have to talk to homeschooling parents about this. We're not trying to force our kids to be any way. We want to take them out of the school system so they can be themselves and they don't get forced to be to someone else. But what we do want to do is we want to highlight to them that, hey, everybody's different, everybody's cool, and everybody's special in their own way. You don't need to be the coolest kid. You don't need to be the most popular kid. What you need to be is be yourself. People like people who are themselves. And what I mean by this is if you just look down the list of your friends, you'll be able to see differences in every single one of them. And that's because we like the uniqueness of every single individual. So whether your kid's an introvert, whether your kid's an extrovert, it doesn't matter. They should be themselves. As long as they have the communication skills from the slide above, they're going to be able to effectively communicate with anyone. Now, we don't want everyone to be the most outgoing, happy individual. We don't want everyone to be the most sad. At least me personally, I like my friends based on their unique quirks and different traits that make them who they are. So I think it's important that our kids just kind of, instead of trying to, fit a mold, we just lean into our quirks. We lean into the things that make us unique. And when they do that, it's actually going to allow them to attract other individuals into their life who are looking for people like that, who will like people like that, which means they're going to be able to build deep relationships based on that. But it also, people can feel authenticity. And if your kid is trying to portray something they're not or portray somebody they're not, people are going to know. It's better to be disliked for who you are than liked for who you're pretending to be. Because at the end of the day, the truth always comes out. So instead of having to go through that whole awkward phase of people seeing that you were wearing a mask, if you just own your personality, it allows people to accept you for who you are, where you are, and the ones who are going to be in your life are going to stay. And the ones who aren't going to be there the world, the universe, God, however you want to look at it, is going to push them out of your life. So instead of trying to fight it by being somebody else, let's just have our kids be themselves, and let's just really highlight what makes them them. Don't try to create something in them. You want to obviously boost, their self-esteem and stuff, but if they're genuinely, a certain way and it's a little quirky, don't lean into it. That's what makes them them. That's what makes them special, at least in my mind. All right, so the last thing I'm going to touch on when it comes to owning their personality is going to be, it takes time to figure out who you are. You have to go through different experience. You have to get positive reinforcements, negative reinforcements. You have to get rejected. You have to get accepted. You just have to get a bunch of different experiences to kind of figure out who you are and what you represent. And at the age when the kids are at the house, that's what I was saying before. I don't think it's important that we try to put a mold on them. I think we should allow them to have that time to figure them out. As long as they're still representing your family's values, they're still living with a good code of ethics, they're not being a bad person, I think we should just let them figure out who they want to be. And I think that those times that we see change, the little bit of change within an individual, is actually growth happening. Because whether they go off the path a little bit or come back on or go a little too far off the path this way, those are just like the boundaries your kids are kind of learning for where they're going to be. And by doing that, they kind of can fine tune and tune up who they're going to be and really come in contact with who they are as a person. Now, I wish I could have said that a little bit better, but I don't want to make this video any longer than it already has been. And I appreciate you guys staying with me till the end. Anything that you guys came across in this video that you want to expand on, you want some more information on, make sure you reach out to us. But also get in the community. I want to build a debate around this. Tell me if I said anything wrong. Tell me if I looked at something maybe a little different than you do. Tell me if you guys have an idea that maybe can work better that we can implement into this. Like I said, let me know what you guys think, and I appreciate you guys again for watching with it, and I'll see you on the next rundown.